Americans should be burning up the Capitol Hill switchboard after you hear today's preamble. The so-called continuing resolution is another fake budget, and it's a lie. An actual continuing resolution would continue the massive pandemic-level inflation-causing government overspending that has been happening since the pandemic, even though the China virus pandemic is long over. Your treacherous Congress has become addicted to your great-great-grandkids' money. But this continuing resolution actually increases overspending, and not by a little. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene explains.
Well, it's really turning into, it's not a CR, which is a continuation of the budget. It's turning into an omnibus, is what it sounds like to me, where they're packing in, everybody's packing in what they want here and there, and using the pressure and the situation of the government shutdown. Of course, tragically, farmers are being dangled. Americans that suffered through natural disasters, they're being dangled with disaster relief. And I think that's incredibly unfair.
It is unfair. I'll expand on why in a moment. But the establishment is telling us that everyone is concerned about getting farmers help and that everyone's concerned about the people suffering in North Carolina. But that's not true. You see, Ukraine, Africa, and other foreign priorities have been fully funded long before we Americans. And lest we forget, Congress funded FEMA, an agency that denied storm aid to Trump supporters. But we're told we must accept all of the crooked, anti-American, unconstitutional provisions in this cramnibus so we can help our suffering fellow Americans.
This was the conservative play call. We don't normally like what's called a continuing resolution, a CR, but in this case it makes sense because if we push it into the first quarter of next year, then we have a Republican-controlled Congress and President Donald J. Trump back in the White House will be able to have more say over the funding decisions for 2025. Now, that would have been an easier thing to do, but then we had circumstances outside of our control. We had these emergencies that are required. So we had, as you know, a record hurricane season. We had Helene and Milton, and they just did massive destruction across our red states, frankly, in the southeast and the eastern side of the country. And then we've had farmers who are in jeopardy of permanently going under. They've had 3 lost years in a row because of Bidenomics and inflation and other circumstances outside of their control.
Well, now I know why the last 2 Republican speakers refused to come on this program. They can't afford to have me ask questions they can't honestly answer. What you just heard from Speaker Johnson was a massive line of BS. There is nothing conservative about this CR. And for the last 27 years, those claiming to be conservative have been voting for fake budgets called continuing resolutions and omnibus overspending measures because they gifted us a government that has grown beyond the consent of the governed. And then they were too lazy to give it proper oversight. So they just put overspending on autopilot. What is Speaker Johnson, in collusion with Chuck Schumer, planning on passing in exchange for money that will finally be spent on Americans? Well, because Congress is the most loathed and despised institution in America, and with the FBI and DOJ still around, that's saying something. Congress, after saddling you with massive inflation, massive illegal immigration, massive crime, basically failing to do the jobs they were elected to do, they think they deserve a raise.
Members are giving themselves a pay raise. Do you guys deserve a pay raise?
Well, that's news to me. It's good news. You know, what has it been, 10 years or 14 years and no COLA, no change at all? I think it's about time something's done.
You support giving yourselves a pay raise?
How would I not know about a pay raise?
But I mean, people look at the performance of Congress and say, why should we give them more money?
What about the media? Think about that for a second.
And we're not paid by public money.
I know you're not, but I mean, half of your listeners are not there anymore. You're still getting the same paycheck? What's going on?
Public money, it's called taxpayers' money. The arrogance and incompetence. Dick Durbin there didn't even know that the lobbyists who are likely writing these bills gave Congress, an institution that has undertaken criminal activity, a raise for their disgusting and un-American performance. But that's not all. As we've been highlighting, the left is praising murder because Americans' health insurance and healthcare industry, it sucks. And they suck because of Obamacare, a law that was crammed down our throats against our will and was sold to us based on lies. You know, folks, I thank God for my wonderful wife, my kids, my country, the greatest nation ever. And Americans like you who believe in the truth, the Chris Salcedo Show will never stop fighting for you.
The Chris Salcedo Show, for the news you need to know.